Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and tackle something pretty frustrating: the dark paradox of the hypertrophy plateau. You know the exact feeling, right? You're sweating more, you're lifting heavier, but your progress has completely flatlined. Or, crazily enough, you feel like your muscles are actually shrinking. So, why on earth does this happen? Well, today we're digging into the hard science to figure that out.
We're going to expose 5 hidden saboteurs that are literally inhibiting your muscle growth. And we're looking strictly at the physiological and biomechanical crimes that so many lifters commit against their own bodies every single day. We'll break down the complex science of overtraining, nutrition, sleep, and biomechanics to show you exactly where things might be going off the rails.
The concept of the plateau paradox brilliantly illustrates the trap of the more is always better myth. I mean, so many of us genuinely believe that if we just push a little bit harder, we'll break through that wall. But here's the biological reality. Your body has a finite capacity for repair. Exceeding that capacity isn't just inefficient, it's exactly what stops your growth dead in its tracks. You see, muscle hypertrophy is driven by the mTORC1 signaling pathway. Think of it as your body's master switch for muscle growth. And it relies on a super delicate balance. Tip those scales way too far toward stress, and you shut the entire system down. Let's hit saboteur number 1, the overtraining paradox. So, where do we actually go wrong here? A big issue is that we often fail to distinguish between functional progressive overload and chronic overtraining. If you map out the continuum of fatigue, you start with functional overreaching. That's the good acute stress that makes your muscles supercompensate and grow after a couple of days of rest. But then there's the middle ground, non-functional overreaching. This is where lifters often mistake a plateau as a sign they're just being lazy. So what do? They add more volume? This just accelerates muscle breakdown and pushes you toward full-blown overtraining syndrome, which can severely compromise your body's entire stress management system. You might be asking, what's the actual magic number for volume then? Well, according to the landmark guidelines from the American College of Sports Medicine, the optimal weekly volume for muscle hypertrophy is right around 10 sets per muscle group. Yep, not 20, not 30, just 10. As recent meta-regression data from sports medicine research shows us, there is a very strict ceiling effect of diminishing returns. Going from 0 to 10 sets triggers a massive increase in your growth potential. But pushing from 20 up to 30 sets, the models reveal you get virtually zero extra muscle. Instead, you're just piling on what we call junk volume that exponentially skyrockets your risk of systemic overtraining. You're quite literally exceeding your hormonal capacity for repair. Moving right along to saboteur number 2, the sleep deficit, or the regenerative window. Let's step away from the gym floor for a second and look at your bed. If you're routinely training heavy on just 5 or 6 hours of broken sleep, listen up. Just 5 nights of restricting your sleep to 4-hour cycles can violently slash your muscle protein synthesis by up to 19%. That means you are plunging your body into a catabolic state where muscle atrophy is literally favored over muscle hypertrophy. I really want to pause and emphasize this because it's absolutely staggering. If you look at the hormonal impact, skipping deep sleep, which is the phase where your rest and digest parasympathetic system takes over, actually drops your testosterone by up to 25% the very next day. Plus, the research reveals a crazy phenomenon called anabolic resistance. This basically means that in a sleep-deprived state, your body biochemically blocks nutrients from building muscle. You could have an absolutely perfect diet and train like a total beast, but your body just won't use those nutrients efficiently at all. All right, saboteur number 3, the nutrition bottleneck. Let's pivot over to the biochemical side to see how bad timing and massive surpluses are actively sabotaging your gains. Obviously, nutrition is the literal building material for your muscles, but a super common error is backloading a massive, say, 100-gram protein meal at the end of the day. Science shows this is highly suboptimal. Instead, getting frequent 20 to 40-gram doses spread out every few hours is way more effective at keeping your net protein balance positive. You have to consistently hit that leucine trigger, which is the specific amino acid that signals your body to grow, all throughout the day. And then, of course, we have the infamous dirty bulk. So many lifters think they need this massive caloric surplus to get huge. But sadly, that whole extra pizza, it's not going right to your biceps. Science shows that a moderate 5% caloric surplus builds the exact same amount of muscle as a massive 15% surplus. Why is that? Well, because your body has a strict physiological speed limit for synthesizing new muscle tissue. Anything extra doesn't magically turn into muscle, it just gets diverted straight to fat storage. Next up, saboteur number 4,
training to failure.
Let's step back onto the gym floor and completely dissect that deeply ingrained no pain, no gain failure myth. The big mistake lifters make here is viewing failure in strictly binary terms. Think about the difference between pushing to 0 repetitions in reserve, like absolute momentary failure, versus leaving 1 to 2 reps in the tank. The hypertrophy stimulus between these two is virtually identical. But taking every single set to absolute failure inflicts this massive tax on your nervous system that will ruin your recovery for days. Research on proximity to failure actually outlines a much safer path to optimizing your weekly volume. Keeping 1 to 2 reps in reserve, especially on heavy compound lifts like squats and deadlifts, really protects your central nervous system. It prevents your technique from breaking down and causing overuse injuries, and crucially, it lets you accumulate so much more high-quality volume throughout the entire week without burning out. Just save that absolute failure for your lighter, single-joint isolation exercises.
And finally, saboteur number 5, ego lifting and biomechanics. This last saboteur is one we honestly see every single day. Ego lifting. It usually impresses absolutely no one, and it completely sacrifices the mechanical tension your muscle fibers desperately need to actually grow. Ego lifting forces you into these shortened partial ranges of motion, essentially just bouncing the weight through the strongest part of the lift. By doing this, you're entirely missing out on what researchers call stretch-mediated hypertrophy. Meta-analysis confirm that when a muscle is trained under high tension in its fully stretched position, it triggers profound additional growth. So default to the largest range of motion you can safely achieve. And this beautifully builds into the concept of eccentric control. A lot of lifters treat the lowering phase of the lift as a mini rest period and just let the weight drop fast. But if you just sling the weight around, you eliminate the time under tension and completely bypass the eccentric-induced microdamage required to trigger new growth. Your muscle fibers are actually at their strongest during the eccentric phase, so control that weight on the way down and make the muscle do the hard work. So the absolutely crucial takeaway from this explainer is that you've got to abandon that more is always better mentality. Muscle growth isn't about blind effort. It's about applying precise biological stress and then allowing for optimal biological repair. So I want to leave you with this. Are you willing to lower the weight on the bar, sleep a little more, drop the junk volume, and let the science actually work for you? Take a really hard look at your routine this week and ask yourself, are you training to grow or are you just training to be tired?